Hey everybody, welcome to the Blendr Report, where news meets rational thinking. I'm your host, Jonathan Harvey. This is your co-host, Liam de Boer. Liam, what's going on today?
We are going to be chatting about Liberals looking to relocate hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers amongst provinces, Canada becoming a breeding ground for terrorism, $70,000 of taxpayer funds being used to study the effects of polyamory on kids, Singh revoking support for the Liberals' carbon tax, and Trump saying he will not participate in a second debate with Harris.
Hey guys, we just launched our Everybody versus Trudeau shirts. They're 100% cotton, super soft, sourced right here in Canada, and all proceeds go to support us at Blendr News and just sort of keep this engine running. So if you like what you see, head on over to www.everybodyversustrudeau.com and get your shirt today.
All right, let's get into it. So first off, we've got Liberals look to relocate hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers throughout Canada. Ottawa is considering redistributing asylum seekers across Canada to ease pressure on Ontario and Quebec, which currently house most of the over 235,000 claimants. The proposed plan would allocate asylum seekers based on provincial populations, potentially increasing numbers in provinces like Alberta and British Columbia while reducing those in Ontario and Quebec. The plan faces opposition from provincial leaders concerned about financial burdens. New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs warned that his province could receive thousands more refugees without adequate funding. Quebec's former immigration minister suggested a quota system to distribute claimants fairly. Immigration Minister Mark Miller defended the plan, stressing the need for all provinces to share the load. However, Alberta and BC premiers have voiced concerns over housing shortages and strained infrastructure. Despite billions in federal funding, the debate over managing Canada's growing refugee population remains complex and contentious amid an ongoing immigration surge. So do you think this will be enough of a shakeup to cause some backlash, or will it go relatively unnoticed?
No, this is going to piss everybody off, right? So first thing is Mark Miller says we will not put a significant amount of asylum seekers in any place, so you won't even notice. Well, look, he goes, immigration's already untenable. As it is, it's already noticeable. Everybody's already paying attention to this because it's affecting the economy, housing, you name it, crime, everything's going up. It's a problem everywhere. You know, and then when you think about the asylum seeker program here, look, who is that good for? First, when you're relocating asylum seekers, I guess they came to the country, they relocated once, but doing it again is going to uproot whatever lives they may have, whatever that, I don't even know what that looks like. Second thing, you talk about, are people going to notice? So right now, Ontario and Quebec are getting punched in the face by the government. That's what this feels like. Well, now the government's going to go punch every other province in the face. So of course they're going to notice. Because the thing is, if you think about asylum seekers versus immigrants directly, now I understand they're all immigrants, but not all immigrants are asylum seekers. So some immigrants, and the idea of immigration to a country is adding value to your country. These people can work, they can do whatever. But then when you look at asylum seekers, you're probably looking at people that are less capable, just in general. I'm not trying to really pick on them. I'm just saying they're probably going to need more government assistance. So what the federal government is saying is we're putting too much financial stress on some provinces. Well, I need you all to be financially stressed by managing these people because they're not likely going to be able to manage themselves. I understand that's a stereotype, but it holds pretty true. So this is going to sort of blow up on the Liberal government because there's no real good solution here. They've created a problem with these open borders, and now it's coming home to roost a little bit.
And two, I think we need to understand that the sharp increase in these asylum seeker numbers isn't just because of actual legitimate asylum reasons. There's a lot of regimes even around the world that are teaching people how to take advantage of these asylum programs. Even the international criminal organizations that we've been talking about on here that are tied in with the Chinese Communist Party and all of this kind of stuff. Sam Cooper's laid out how some of these members, they'll just get on a plane, and as soon as they're on the plane and they're boarded, they just tear up all their papers, essentially saying who they are. And then when they land, they'll say, oh, I'm being persecuted by the Chinese government. And then all of a sudden that becomes an asylum case. And in reality, they're actually working with the Chinese government. From
my understanding, actually, a lot of people are coming here, flying in now, more flying in than coming in through the borders, like through vehicles or walking or whatever. And once they're here, they're claiming asylum. So even if they keep their documents, they're then going through the channels to then claim asylum once they're already here. Like they flew in. There's no reason for any of this, but they're just taking advantage of the system.
Well, and the same thing is happening down in the States too. There's been even videos on TikTok where they highlight the exact route that these migrants should be taking, and where they can essentially hit refugee points and stuff, like where they have these camps and these centers to kind of help push along the process. But what's crazy too is the gaslighting with this situation, because Immigration Minister Mark Miller, he's still sitting here saying how Canadians are positive about immigration. There's 2 clips here I want to play by him. This is the first one here.
There are, and this the strategic review that my department did, which sounds like a bureaucratic turn of phrase for most people, but it did show that Canadians are still positive about immigration. I think the polls still show that, but they don't want an immigration system that's out of control or that is going in a direction that doesn't make sense. And
okay, Canadians are still largely positive about immigration. They just don't want an immigration system that's out of control. It's like,
well, it's completely out of control.
And first of all, 60% of Canadians think that, So it's like, that's just a straight up lie. This is, and then this is him going on about the redistribution plan and how he lays out how the provinces don't really have a choice here. Like,
he made that clear.
We're willing to work with them as long as they're willing to work with us. But if they say they don't want this, we'll just shove them down their throats.
Yeah, something came out about this yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, right now we could open up a hotel in any particular province and ship people there. That's an option. We have been moving people around to relieve pressure from Ontario and Quebec. It's not a financially viable model. It's not an effective model, but it's one that needs some reform in order to make sure the provinces are stepping up, looking at what their labor force needs are, what the capacity is to help some of these folks as they wait the determination of their protected person status. And it's one where we actually need coordination with provinces. Most of the provinces are at the table talking to us about what these models would be. It's far from being complete. But again, there's only so far the federal government can actually be nice and say, please, we also have levers that we need to pull and push. And provinces do get the benefit from immigration. So it's something that we need to deal with in a responsible fashion, and we expect every single province to be responsible.
Yeah, that's the problem you have. This is the problem you have here in Canada. Like, at least in the United States, the states have more control. Like, they'll basically face off against the federal government if they're acting crazy like this. Because if you think about it, like, break it down and explain to me who benefits from mass immigration. Really, right now. Maybe you can say down the line, more populous, you can cover social programs, whatever. They're all corrupt anyway. But the reality is, the immigrants don't have a good life, and the Canadians here don't have a good life. It has nothing to do with, in this particular, where I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on culture, ethnicity. I'm just focusing on the fact of pure volume and infrastructure. We don't have it. So we're all suffering. That's exactly what's going on here. Now, if you want to go to the cultural side, we know that we're sort of diametrically opposed to a lot of these other cultures. So they're not going to fit when you have more and more of these people here. It's not going to work for society. It's just not, bottom line. But then the other thing too is you look at a lot of this sort of asylum seeker thing. And I'm going to make a comparison that might be a little unpopular. But when you have government housing, prior to immigration problems, it was government housing. But people did not want the government housing scattered throughout the city. They wanted it isolated because of crime rates and all these other things. It's unfortunate, but objectively speaking, it's factual, right? So they didn't want it in their neighborhood. It was unpopular. People maybe wouldn't say it, but that's how they felt. You're going to get the same thing with this asylum program. You're going to get a lot of these people that are just not going to be happy with having these people being shipped into their cities, whether it's costing them taxpayer dollars to put them in a hotel, like you just said right there, or they're being scattered throughout the city or put in these projects or whatever it may be. My point is, you're just creating more divide and more contention within the country. That's actually what's going to happen here, unfortunately.
What's funny is Johnny Harris, he's a reporter down in the States, and he did a collaboration video with the New York Times. And to your whole point about government housing, one of the things that he highlighted was that the places that are most adamant about low income housing are also some of the least likely to accept that being brought into their areas. So, like, for instance, he was detailing how the most adamant people for these programs would be in high-flying areas of California, et cetera. Right. But then once those things actually start getting put into motion, they're like, hey, I don't actually want, like, or another great example is you've seen that multiple people have done this where they'll go to pro-asylum seeker rallies and hand out a sign-up sheet saying, hey, will you house any of these migrants? We're looking for a shelter. And they go, oh, I don't have the space for that. And then so you see them like all of a sudden come into contradiction with their belief. They're like, I want these things, but I don't want to have to deal with them. I just want all of the earned virtue, or the easily earned virtue.
Yeah, you're right, though.
Of saying, I'm such a good person.
They want the virtue points. Yeah. It's like New York's a great example. They're an asylum. It was asylum state, right? So everybody going to New York. Mayor Adams was losing his shit. He's like, it's costing us billions, tens of billions of dollars to house these people. Crime's up. They got nowhere to go. They're taking over the Waldorf Astoria. And they're like, I remember them saying on TV, we're gonna have to put some of these, some of these asylum seekers in your homes. And all the people that are like, yeah, that's like asylum state. They're like, not a chance. Not one person's going in anybody's private home. I don't think any of that happened. So it's like you said, it's primarily virtue signaling, and all that's okay. Because I actually don't think a lot of Canadians are on board with this. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's really as much of like a political stance. Like, yeah, we want them here. Sure, there's some zealots out there screaming and yelling with blue hair, and that's fine. Let them do their thing. But by and large, I think people are going, we in Canada, we just can't do this right now. You guys have not adequately built the infrastructure. So this actually, when you think about it, you feel bad. I do. I feel bad for the asylum seekers because they're being sold sort of this false promise or this false dream. And it's all because of bad government management. This whole thing is a government problem. And all they're doing is creating divide within society, which at the end of the day seems to be their MO.
Well, let's look at what their plan will do as well, because they talk about how, all right, well, we can just open up a hotel in these areas and essentially ship these asylum seekers into that hotel. You don't get much say. Well, look at what's already happening in Niagara. You were talking about this before when you went down there, right?
Yeah,
where a lot of these people are also complaining about what this does for their businesses, right? What this does for the tourism sector. Like, okay, if you've got Niagara, that is a very tourist heavy destination, and now all of a sudden you put, I don't know the exact figure on this here, but I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10, 20, 30% of rooms are now being...
Oh, yeah, okay. They had whole hotels.
Yeah.
They would just take the whole hotel.
But I just mean if you take all the hotel rooms across Niagara, it's probably somewhere in that 10 to 30% range. I would think somewhere in that neighborhood that are being used for this purpose. And now you've just eaten up 10 to 30% of the supply for people that actually want to come here and be tourists. And then also that has a cascading effect as well, because then the hotel or the restaurants in the area don't get as much business, etc.
The whole economy suffers. Yeah. The only people that do well are the hotels that are fully booked, probably at an increased price to the government. That's all. They're the ones making the money. They're providing the food. So they're going, yeah, it's cool. Like I'm booked fully. And at the end of the day, once these people leave, I'll just remarket this place again anyway. So it's like, I'm in the restaurant business. If they're like, hey, Jonathan, we'll buy your place out. It'll be like, it's a Friday, Saturday night, every day of the week. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Like I get it from the hotel's perspective. It's wild that that's a government option to use our tax dollars for this. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to our next story. We've got borderline chaos. Liberal policies are turning Canada into a terrorist breeding ground. Canada has seen an alarming rise in terrorist plots, exposing flaws in its immigration system. The recent arrest of Muhammad Khan, a Pakistani national in Quebec, for plotting an ISIS-inspired mass killing at a Jewish center in New York, highlights concerns over the country's ability to screen radicals, as Khan entered via the student visa program. In July 2024, Ahmed and Mustafa El-Didi were arrested in Toronto for planning an ISIS attack. Despite Ahmed's violent history, he was granted Canadian citizenship, further revealing gaps in the system. Other incidents, including foiled plots in Ottawa, Calgary, and Surrey, BC, show a growing trend of ISIS-inspired terrorism in Canada. These cases emphasize how radicalized individuals exploit Canada's immigration pathways, making the country increasingly vulnerable to terrorism. Without addressing these systemic issues, Canada risks becoming a safe haven for extremists, threatening both national security and its global standing. So, is this just an unintended consequence or malicious intent?
I think it's an unintended consequence. Because when things like this happen, it's a political nightmare for the party that kind of opened up the policy, right? It's also creating a divide between the United States and Canada, our primary trading partner, your neighbor to the south. They'll kick the shit out of us, XYZ. So these kinds of things, I think, happen just when you have bad policy that leave a lot of gaps, a lot of open spaces to let, whatever radical wants to get in the country. And we see it. Like this guy, the most recent one was through a student visa program. We know that through the temporary foreign worker program, they're throwing out all the safeguards. That was rubber stamp. We also know that our organizations are actually compromised, in the CBSA specifically, which is the Border Patrol. And you think about it, that's kind of your first line of defense. So once people are in the country, the whole, they basically, it's their playground. So I think there are people that have malicious intent, like the people that would maybe come in and compromise our organizations, like sort of your Chinese triads and stuff like that are penetrating those units and penetrating our politics. That's malicious intent. But I think from Canadian government perspective as a whole, I believe it's an unintended consequence of really bad policy. But at the end of the day, look, these guys, like, I say this all the time, but it's sort of it's a little unfair because you can't win this argument. No one's really qualified to run a country. It's a job you almost can't really prepare for.
It's like what we were talking about the other day with life coaches. It's like, who the hell do you think you are to call
be a
yourself
life coach?
A life coach?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's so silly, right? So it's the same kind of thing. You can't really be qualified. Now, that being said, there's a sliding scale of qualification. There are some people that do a really great job, and there's some people that do a really, really terrible job. The Liberal government over the last 9 years, and Trudeau specifically, he's at the bottom end. He's in the bottom 10% of capacity to be running this country. He has a lack of experience, a lack of, it seems like, awareness. He may be a touch short on intelligence. I'm not really too sure there. I think his ego is a significant problem for him. But I also think that the Liberal Party over the last 10, 20 years has become very, what do I want to say? They've lost their way in a lot of ways. So I think when you're working with those tools that he has, and then you're implementing policy to have mass immigration, there's no way. It's a Swiss cheese process. There's going to be holes everywhere. There's no way this is going to work out well. So I do think, by and large, as a Canadian from the Canadian government, unintended consequence, even though there is malicious intent because the people that have kind of worked their way in.
So I agree with you that I think the most charitable and most likely scenario is that this is an unintended consequence. But then here's where my mind goes. When you pull a lever and then you have an unintended consequence, I can understand that you're like, oh shit, I didn't want that thing to happen. So let's say you pull the lever of allowing mass immigration and pulling back. We even saw, right, with the was it the foreign worker program or the student visas where they were rubber stamping it, where they were saying
this temporary foreign worker, they said they were rubber stamping, but I think it's safe to say both. I think it's safe to say both because the volume.
So what they were saying there was like, just don't even do the fraud prevention steps anymore. Just get these applications through, make it quicker. This was coming directly out of the CBSA that this was happening. But so that's the lever they pulled. Okay, mass flood immigration. Terrorists using that loosening of restrictions to their ability is, say, an unintended consequence. But if you continue pulling on this lever after you know that this is an unintended consequence, at what point do we say that you want that? Or at least you're willing to deal with that in order to have your desired goal of the mass immigration. Because this is something we've even seen in Europe too, right? In England, the amount of terrorist attacks over the last 10, 20 years, killing dozens, if not over 100 people in some scenarios. And, this goes back for 20, 30 years. If you continue to push forward with this policy, at what point can I stop saying that this is just ignorance on your part?
Well, I think you make a good point. I think it's an unintended consequence, but I do think that they have a duty to plug up the hole, to build a dam when you do see these problems. So I agree with you. I think that the problem you have primarily is, and maybe this is across the political spectrum, but when the party makes a decision and they move forward with a policy, for whatever reason that may be, there's no going back, because then you're admitting fault, you're admitting I did something wrong and blah, 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 and you get lambasted by the other side, 100%. You know what I mean? So don't agree with it at all. But again, when you look at the political landscape, that's the language they speak and how they operate. It's like, no, we got to cover this up. We just have to do more of this. We're going to figure this out. This wasn't our fault. We didn't do anything wrong, X, Y, Z. I feel like that's how a lot of those things work. So a reasonable government would go, hey, man, this is a tough job. We wanted to do this program. We wanted to fix the economy, X, whatever it is. It's not really working out. Part of it is, but some people are kind of sneaking through the cracks. Here's the adjustments we're going to make it better. That'd be a reasonable government. That'd be a reasonable thing to do. But all these people care about is power, and it seems in a lot of cases profit. And it's not beneficial for either to admit fault and then try to fix your mistakes.
I think that's a huge shortcoming of human nature in general, though, because
I agree.
we can shit on politicians for not changing course when they realize that there's unintended consequences that are a bigger issue than the issue they tried to solve in the first place. But it also comes down to us as well when we, as say the general populace, don't accept course changes. Like, we further penalize them if they admit that they're wrong, right? This is something that even happens within the commentary space. Let's take it off of as much, there's not as much on the line even, and it's just, say, what you and I do, where we voice opinions. This is a good example. Last episode we covered the Coutts border thing, right? Even in that, both of us said how, like, is there something we're missing here? Why is it that the pro-freedom convoy movement is crying foul, but from what I can see, it looks kind of like these charges or these sentences were legitimate.
Looks like the shoe fits, yeah.
Like, so what am I missing here or something, right? And even in that case, you get people that would typically agree with us. Now, some people did just genuinely come across and say, hey, this might be the piece that you're missing. And I'll get into that in a minute because it is different than we thought. But then there was also a lot of people who, say, just instantly attacked and were like, oh, you guys don't know anything, quote unquote, do more research, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's fine.
But sometimes I do scroll through them quick just to see if there is, because the odd time, and it's more often than not, you do get some genuine pushback that you're like, oh, that at least helps build or find a shortcoming on my point or something.
You want to foster that within your audience. You appreciate praise, but at the end of the day, if people have something critical to say, you want it to actually help further the conversation and make things more complete or better. That's how you and I operate in the private space that a lot of people don't do. And I think that's the difference. Like, I would love that if you have an audience going, hey, let me help you with this. Let me fact check this. Let me do that, whatever, and make it better. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the audience you want to foster. So I think it's good to positively reward that.
But I think there just as much on the left as there is on the right, where if you don't say exactly what they want you to say, then they'll write you off. And this isn't everybody.
Oh, I
but
get
just
that.
some people.
Some people, yeah.
And I just
I had one of those the other day.
And it's not that it bothers me on a personal level. It just, like, to me, I shake my head and I go, like, hypocrites. Like, you lambast the left for doing this exact same thing, but as soon as somebody doesn't say the line exactly how you want them to say
on
the
every
line
issue,
on every issue, then it's like, I'm done with you. It's like, say our dogmatic position, or I'm done with you.
That's not how I operate, and I never ever will. My whole thing is acting with logic and reason and trying to find the right answer and trying to find the actual truth. That's how you and I operate. So we're never going to do that. But at the end of the day, I think when you lose people like that, it's probably for the better.
Yeah,
it's good. It's like, see you later, bud.
But I will say the one, the correction to be made there is that when it comes to the weapons in the Coutts border thing. So thank you to the few of you that did give me actually some very good resources there. We're also going to try to have somebody on in the near future who knows a lot more about this case and kind of do a full episode on it. But either way, essentially what it boils down to is the pipe bomb that the guy was charged with was left to him by his father, and it was 200 kilometers away in a house under the floorboards, which, like, obviously there wasn't intent to use it. And
that's as much as going like, hey, you got the ingredients to make mustard gas in your house, dude. We're going to throw you in jail. It's like, yeah, those are pretty common chemicals, man. What are you talking about?
And it was the same thing with the rifle for the other guy. It wasn't even on premise. It was like a good distance away from the border. But
so is that being appealed then? Because, like, I mean, they're already being given 4 years for time served and 2.5. Maybe they're like, oh, who cares? We'll just deal with it. But, like, is that not being appealed? Because it seems like a pretty gross abuse of justice. If you actually there's no weapons on site, pipe bomb. The guy didn't even have his fingerprints on it. It was hundreds of kilometers away under the floorboards. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I don't know where. Hopefully, the guy that we have on, if we can make it work, that he'll be able to break that all down in a little bit more depth. But one thing that I was thinking about in regards to that case is going, because you can say, okay, it's unjustified, right? But I was thinking about it. Okay, so why would they, other than just the trying to go hard on political dissenters?
For sure. Yeah,
I was thinking there actually might be a lot more on the line with this, because you know how the liberals are trying to appeal the the federal court decision that found its use of the Emergencies Act was unjust.
Yes.
Well, if they don't have cases like this where they can say, look, these people were clearly violent. They were trying to cause an insurrection. They wanted to literally kill police officers or overthrow the government.
Yeah.
They can use that if they, whether it's true or not,
unless they appeal,
if
then
they
it becomes
charge
a
these
conversation.
people with that, then they can use that to say now justify their bigger political issue, which is the Emergencies Act.
Right, but that was the Coutts border. That wasn't even Ottawa, where the Emergencies Act was pulled, right?
But I think it's the Liberal government.
I hear you, but I think that's a pretty easy argument. Like, I'm ripping that guy for using that. It's like, yeah, in Wisconsin, someone also got shot in the head the same day. You want to tie that in together? What are you talking about?
But what they're doing is they try to make it seem like these things are all interconnected throughout the exact same goal.
I understand, but then you got to prove communication. You got to prove an aligned sort of strategy here, which I think is would be tough.
I'm not saying this is the case, but
I know we're getting lost in the weeds
no.
here. I get defensive because I think the government's full of shit.
Yes, but
I also think
I'm just trying to say I'm just trying to say what their position will be.
That makes sense.
Which is the other one is that in that case, they do try to make it seem like these people are communicating and organized through Diagolon, and I'm not. And again, it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a fan of the Diagolon guys. I've listened to them maybe for like 5-10 minutes and I was like, this is not my cup of tea. But they make it seem like this is this alt-right, well-organized militia group, right? And that they were saying that this, I mean, they try to
farce, but it's notably a farce. If they bring that up in a legal case, they're going to get ripped for that too.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are idiots. You just watch the mainstream media and then bring that to court? What are you talking about?
Well, this is just like in the Soviet Union, whenever they were cracking down on political dissenters, they would accuse you of being a Trotskyist or a counter-revolutionary, and they would say that in Stalin and the official regime's position was that Trotskyism and this counter-revolutionary uprising was like a well-organized machine and all of this, when it wasn't. It was a complete fiction, but they made and they propagandized the general public into believing that there was this counter-revolutionary force. It's the same thing in 1984 with Goldstein and the Brotherhood, right? Where it's like, and actually in 1984, it ended up kind of being left open-ended, but part of the question you had at the end of that book was like, okay, did the government itself create this Goldstein figure as a way to lure people into it? Either way, what I'm saying is like, just because this whole Diagolon thing is bullshit and it's not real doesn't mean the federal government won't try to make it to seem like a organized machine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may be a little late on that particular group, but I understand the strategy. One other thing I think that's kind of funny is the video they did on CBC as I guess what would you say, a parody of the trucker convoy, which they used taxpayer dollars. Which was the Oompa Loompa thing, which is so ridiculous. But you talk about trying to propagandize a situation. That's how you can get the public to see it as such. It's like I don't know how deep their strategy goes, but like you said, if they're making sure that these guys do time, so they've got okay, I got that base covered. We can say that they were violent and they were going to do this and this and X, Y, Z. Said that a lot today. They're going to do this and this, sure. And then you got this video that's kind of propagandizing the situation to be like, I didn't really watch it. I found it too cringe. I kind of turned away from it, to be honest. But you know, you're sort of building this public persona of this event because maybe you're going to try to win in sort of the court of public opinion. So that's why you maybe do something like that. I can't see any other reason other than these people are idiots. So I don't know if that plays a role at all. I just thought I'd add that in because I thought it was kind of, I'm trying to understand why they did it, I guess, and now I feel like I've got a reason.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, even the Soviets, right? Again, going back to Stalin's regime, they co-opted entertainment and media and art, all of it. And so what that is the CBC's attempt at being comedic, which had none of it. It was very cringe, but the goal is through propaganda to promote obedience, right? So if you're not obedient to our mandates, well, you're dumb.
Well, that's exactly. So if you support these people,
message they try to,
and that's how you win through public opinion, because you say, well, if you agree with these people, you're an idiot holding the sign that says freedom, and you're an Oompa Loompa.
Yeah, Got it. And actually, so there was this famous story that was this child in the Soviet Union that was turned into a martyr. And the way it went was that this son found out that his father was a counter-revolutionary, so he turned his father into the Soviet regime And then after doing the right thing, his aunts and uncles and family banded together and killed him for turning into his father. And the Soviet Union turned this kid into a martyr, saying like he did the right thing and his family is cruel and they punished him for it, right? Although it turned out the whole thing was fucking fake. The kid probably never existed.
Oh, wow.
A lot of historians were like, yeah, this story was just made up. So the Soviet Union made up, most likely, this entire story of this kid dying just to promote obedience.
Well, I hope that these guys get some justice, because that's really frustrating that, you end up being the line of fire of some sort of propagandized situation, so that the government can try to win a case because they acted a fool.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I mean, I don't know what that case looks like or how far along it is, but the Liberal government won't be in power probably in the next year, around a year from now. So I wonder if that thing just fizzles out once they're gone anyway.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Do we have anything similar here where, say, there's the equivalent of presidential pardons? Do you know if that's a thing here?
Who would need the pardon?
The guys, like, let's say Pierre
Oh,
Polyev
sorry.
got
Yeah,
in
yeah. Oh,
a
the
year from
Coutts
in
guys.
2025, and we're like,
There
hey,
must be. There must be.
Hey, like,
Yeah.
I can't give you the time you've already served back.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
Yes, Canada has an equivalent to presidential pardons known as a record suspension or pardon. This process is administered by the Parole Board of Canada, and it allows individuals who have completed their sentences and demonstrated good behavior to have their criminal record suspended, effectively removing the stigma and limitations associated with a criminal conviction. I guess, yeah, that goes through more of the parole board, though, and it looks more like it's just like, okay, after you've proven that you've done your time, we can take this off. So let's say you have an easier time finding employment or whatever, but it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't look like...
Okay, so in Canada, the Prime Minister does not have the direct authority to pardon individuals who are in jail. The power to grant pardons, known as the Royal Prerogative of Mercy, is exercised by the Governor General on the advice of the federal cabinet, typically through the Minister of Public Safety. This is outlined in the Criminal Records Act, which governs the pardon process in Canada.
Okay, so it looks like more...
Again, the pardons are intended to forgive individuals who have been convicted of a crime after they've completed their sentence and demonstrated good behavior. So can you get people out of jail? This is stupid. Yes, the Canadian government can get people out of jail who are still serving time, but the process is indirect and involves the Royal Prerogative of Mercy, which can be used in exceptional circumstances to grant clemency. So yeah, you can.
Okay. So it's more done by bureaucracy than by...
The clemency can take different forms, such as a pardon, which typically happens after the sentence is served, or a commutation of sentence, which can reduce or alter the sentence for someone still serving time, including the possibility of early release. So yes, ultimately the tools are there for him to go, you can get out.
Cool. Well, hopefully something like that happens then if this is all a sham. All right, moving on to our next story. We've got taxpayers paid $70,000 for study promoting parental polyamory as healthy for kids. The Liberal government has funded a $70,000 study on polyamory using taxpayer money to explore whether exposing children to polyamorous relationships benefits their development. Anybody who is unfamiliar with polyamory, it means that there is multiple partners within a relationship. So this is your what do they call them? They're thruples. Conducted by Quebec researchers and funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, the study interviewed 18 children from LGBT plus polyamorous households. It concluded that the exposure to multiple romantic partners could positively influence child development, a controversial claim given the limited sample size. The study has sparked criticism over the use of public funds, with many questioning whether it represents a misuse of taxpayer money rather than a meaningful societal contribution. Is Canada even a real country at this point?
This is so ridiculous because here's the thing. Reality check. Let's back into how a child thinks and feels first and why this is just ridiculous. So they're saying they wanted to spend $70,000 to study polyamorous households. It might be the worst use of funds I've ever seen, because here's the reality. If you raise a child in a house with 4 or 5 adults, like let's say your grandparents live with you, your kid doesn't know the difference, whether it's polyamorous or whether they're just part of the family. They're 4 and 5 years old. They're kids in the argument here, right? So if they're raised well by a group of people and they have a loving family and they're happy and they have everything they need and they're getting the energy they need to thrive, then yeah, they're going to do great. It has nothing to do with whether there are 2 or 4 parents there, whether it's a polyamorous relationship. This all has to do with how the children are treated, right? So like, you're not sexualizing the children in these situations, or you're a fucking monster. So this is just absolutely ridiculous, because you can have 2 parents that can do a really, really terrible job, 2 parents that can do a really great job. It doesn't matter what their sexual preferences are. And that goes up and up and up. You have 10 people in the household raising your kids. If they do a great job and the kids are happy, they don't know what you're doing behind closed doors. And that better be where it stays. So this is the most ridiculous use of funds. And whoever approved this should get slapped in the face. Whoever went through with the study should get slapped in the face. And Trudeau should get slapped in the face just because he kind of deserves another one.
I think I disagree a little bit. I don't think that it would be beneficial for a child to have, say, a mommy and 3 daddies or whatever. Like, I think that would get a little bit confusing for the child. I think this stuff can get a little weird, to be honest, especially considering, like, here, just watch this video. You're telling me that this is going to be a normal, healthy household for this child to grow up in?
This is Ari, Gwendolyn, and Brynnifer. They are in a polyamorous relationship, and they all parent Hazel and Sparrow.
We have a 2-year-old anti-gender baby and a 10-year-old who is non-binary.
They have chosen not to disclose Sparrow's gender.
We don't know it yet. It's something that Sparrow's gonna have to figure out and then tell us.
But their parenting approach is controversial.
I have literally received death threats. Crazy, crazy lady. I hope karma hits you back and your kids grow up to detest you.
You're taking sort of extreme individuals. So that's not, that goes against what I'm saying. That's not a positive way to raise kids. It doesn't matter if only 2 of those people were in the household, that's no better. That woman's off her rock. She is crazy. That was the right word to use. So it doesn't matter if there's 3 or 4 or 5. That lady's crazy. She's going to ruin that kid's life if they're all non-binary and doing all these weird gender things at that age. So again, to me, that kind of boils down to, are these mature adults and do they know how to raise kids, and are the kids getting what they need, right? So I don't disagree with you. I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think it's a good spend of money. I think that's ridiculous. But I really think it comes down to how the kids are treated. And I go back to the grandparent thing. If your grandparents are there, my in-laws come here all the time. They love being around Jackson. My mom, I've never seen her so happy. They love being around him, right? So we spend time together, and the child gets more attention. It gives the parents a bit of a break. It's actually quite nice. That's kind of my perspective, is if the household is mentally fit, you're okay with 3 or 4 people. I don't promote it, but I'm just saying, I'm using the grandparent example. But when you go to the extreme side,
things are comparable, though. I don't think living with your grandparents is comparable to your parents having multiple partners.
I'm not on board with this. I already said this is stupid. A stupid way to spend money. But again, go ahead.
So what I'm pointing to here is that you're saying, well, okay, if these multiple people represented normal people, if they weren't crazy, then it doesn't seem that crazy.
I don't think it is, because you're saying, well, the stepdad's going to be like this and that, and this is all these people. You're adding things into the mix. My point
is that normal people don't go into those relationships in the first place. So I actually used to work on open relationship podcasts. I would do the editing for these podcasts. I can firsthand tell you, like, these episodes, what they would do is every single episode, they would be interviewing a different open relationship.
Sure.
These are not healthy relationships. They are almost always entirely one partner within the group or within the relationship putting the other into a position they don't want to be in, which is usually the female to the male, because this is how I could always see it. It was like literally cookie cutter. Sure. Take away even the LGBTQ stuff. It was always a more attractive, more charismatic woman with a man that you could tell was more of like a settling type of scenario, right?
Sure.
She probably got bored in the marriage and wasn't fulfilled romantically anymore. And it was one of those things where it's either, hey, we can get out of this relationship and you're going to be single, or I can explore outside of it and we can continue working together on this front. And then, so in all of these interviews, it seemed like you needed to say to the husband, like, blink twice if you're okay. Because the guy was just sitting there just being like, I'm so glad that my wife is happy now. And you're just like, you're trying to convince yourself it's okay that your wife.
Sure. So maybe you have insight that I don't have.
Yeah.
So your insight sort of still makes what I'm saying correct in the sense that that's unstable. That's an unstable relationship. So I don't think that should work, whether it's 2 people, 3 people, 4, 5, I don't care. If there's instability, that's not, my point is this. If there's instability at all, it's not a good environment to raise kids. That's kind of my perspective. But if it is stable, then it's fine. It doesn't make a difference.
Let me show you this. Open relationships have a 92% failure rate.
Sure.
They're
Again,
overwhelmed. And I know certain people are going to be like, well, some marriages are a 50% failure rate, so whatever. Well, first of all, that's almost double. But
no, that's insane. That's insane. That's insane.
But second of all, the reason that marriage rates are starting to fall, as well as divorce rates starting to rise, is because people don't take their relationships as seriously anymore. And when people get in and they look at marriage as something that's supposed to make you happy, rather than marriage is supposed to be something that creates a scenario where the next generation of life can be properly brought into the world through.
Sure.
And so when you get into a marriage, I think you have a duty that it's not anymore, okay, it's about my happiness. This marriage is here to build my happiness. This marriage is here to make sure that this child has proper development. And then when you start entering into a situation, let's say open relationships, where you know that laneway is only going to end up destabilizing the environment for that child. Again, 92% failure rate.
I'm not on board with polyamorous relationships. I get it.
Yeah.
We're on the same page. You're also not married, so you got to chill when you say stuff like that. I've been with the same woman for 20 years and I have kids. You do need to be happy in your relationship. You can't just sit there and have it be self-serving for the family and be this and be miserable. Like that's also not acceptable.
There's one second.
Relationships
No,
take
but
work.
that was mischaracterized, because my thing is not that you shouldn't be happy in your marriage or that you should be miserable in your marriage or whatever. The point being made is that happiness can't be the overall objective of the relationship. That it can't be the highest goal. I'm not saying it's not. So it's like a job. Like at the end of the day, if two people go into business together, the overarching goal that needs to be had between those two people is the business's success. Not I need to be happy on my day-to-day basis at work.
I think you and I are kind of running in circles here with each other and sort of chasing our own tails. We agree that this is a really ridiculous way to spend money. Statistically speaking, polyamorous relationships are not going to be good for children. We agree there. I'm of the opinion that you can have as many people as you want in the household, not as many, but you know what I mean, within reason, providing there's a great environment for the children to thrive and get what they need out of life. That's how I feel. I think there's a very, very small crossover between probably polyamory and a positive household. I think it's, like you said, 92%, so 8% work, maybe 4% of those are a great environment for kids. But here's the thing. I don't think it's a good way to spend money. I don't suggest it. Like you said, statistically, it's not really a great move, even though 50% of marriages break up anyway. But here's the thing. Spending taxpayer dollars on this doesn't do anything for society, because we are built at this point now to stay within a relationship where it's monogamous. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on this. Most people won't even venture into this space because they think it's insane. It's not even what they want to do. So it's just a bad use of weird liberal policy, and I'm not even sure how this money shook loose to do this study. Can we pretty much agree on that?
Sure.
Okay.
I want to break down exactly why they want to promote these kind of things, though. So this comes all out of queer theory, which is that, because I've broken down how throughout Marxism there's the constant power dynamic of oppressed versus oppressor, right? Of privilege versus victim. And so what they try to do is they try to break down all of these barriers. Well, what queer theory is it is actually the idea that normativity, anything considered normative by society, is oppressive, and then the abnormal aspect is the oppressed. So the normal people are oppressors, abnormal people are oppressed. So their idea is to completely break down the very concept of normal itself. And that's why they get into these relationships with families and such, because they go, okay, well, the nuclear family is considered like one father, one mother is considered normal, or it has been considered normal. Well, they say that very structure, that very idea, the fact that you're labeling that as normal is oppressive to people that aren't that thing.
Yeah, okay.
And then so we need to actually, from a social justice position, completely ruin the idea that a nuclear family is normal.
I get that. So the thing you get with that, though, is this. People have shown that they will be more agreeable than they should. You're seeing story time with drag queens for kids, completely unacceptable. You can't even protest those things. You go to jail. You look at that as a sort of as a little silo. You go, that's insane that we got that far. But people are just more afraid to push back. They're not going to buy into it. People aren't going to be like, yeah, and I'm going to bring my kids. They're like, do whatever you want. I'm not bringing my kids to that shit. So you get some people that will participate, but they're a little off kilter anyway. They bought it too much into partisanship. So my point is this. The large majority of people that would call themselves liberal don't agree with that because they probably have kids. They go, this is fucking nuts. And I'm not going to get in your way because I'm going to toe the party line, but I'm not participating. It's just like this. You do these studies. They only did 18 families. You do these studies. You're like, hey, this is okay. And most guys go, yeah, that's great. Good for you. I'm going to go back to my normal life because you guys are off your fucking rocker. So yeah, I agree. But I think society does have a reasonable filter. They've got two filters. One is, will I allow this to happen in society? That's a pretty open filter. These liberals right now will let a lot of crazy things happen. But then, will I let it happen in my home? That's much tighter. And like we're seeing with the immigration stuff, like, yeah, pro-immigration. Well, they can't come in my door, though. It's the same idea with this. So yeah, do all the stuff you want to do over here. I won't fight back. But if you try to bring it to my doorstep, the door is locked. Same thing here. That's what this is going to be. So I totally understand the perspective. I understand the strategy. But at scale, well, this won't make a dent.
I agree in the present moment, but if things continue to go on the same path a generation or two from now, that won't be the case with how you look at how they're pushing this stuff on kids through the education system. Like this concept of the nuclear family, if they're successful, if this stuff continues to ramp up in our schools, I am leaving room for the fact that it could go the opposite direction and we could actually start.
It's our duty. It's our generation's duty to stop this.
Exactly.
And us, we fail if we don't.
But if we fail, a generation or two from now, people could be looking at the nuclear family as something that is a thing of the past and just completely dispense with it, despite the fact that we know it is the absolute best way for a society to operate.
Well, I think you go back to what you said. There's something innate about properly raising your children. And if you build environments that negatively affect children, people will always fight that. And there will never be a full buy-in to it. It won't happen because there will always be a big, big push. I don't care if it's grassroots or underground or whatever, but there'll always be this constant push to try to get it back to normal because it is what's better for kids. And when you have children, something happens that you just innately understand what to do. You hear a kid crying, you run towards the kid. You just do it. You're not like, oh, what should I do? I wonder. You just go. It's just built into you. So when these things happen, you just sort of understand the right process. Yes, you need help. Yes, you need guidance. I'm not saying that. But at scale, you kind of it's woven into the fabric of human beings. It's how we got here. And if society is building a system that goes completely against that, you are constantly going to have a group of people, no less than 10, 20%, even if it went all the way the other way and it was crazy. I still think you'd have at least 20% of society always fighting back, always building sort of a parallel, not economy, but sort of a parallel society, a parallel way of life that is the right way to raise kids. It will always be there fighting. So I don't think even if you destroy the nuclear family from a macro perspective, there's this foundation of what's right that I think will continue to thrive.
Yeah, I think it, over time it would definitely implode, but I think you can definitely
can ruin a couple generations for sure. You can cause damage, but I'm telling you, the good will prevail in this case.
Yeah,
because there's something that's it's hardwired. From my perspective, anyway.
All right, moving on to our next story. We've got Singh signals NDP plan to oppose liberal version of carbon tax, says it puts the burden on backs of working people. Mr. Singh repeatedly avoided answering how he and the NDP would vote on a non-confidence motion this week. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has announced plans to introduce such as a motion as soon as Parliament resumes. Poilievre, whose party leads in the polls, is pushing for a carbon tax election this fall to let voters decide on his proposal to scrap the carbon pricing scheme. However, he has yet to offer an alternative climate plan. On Thursday, Singh was asked about his stance on consumer carbon pricing. He criticized the Conservative plan, saying it gives free rein to big polluters, and also expressed disagreement with the Liberal approach. We want to fight the climate crisis without putting the burden on working people, and we believe big polluters should pay their fair share, Singh said. He added that the NDP is working on a plan that will be released in the coming months. Deputy Conservative leader Melissa Lantsman pointed out that the NDP has voted multiple times in favor of the current carbon pricing system. In a statement, she reiterated that the Conservatives call for the NDP to back a fall election. So, how could you possibly continue to think the NDP believe in their policies after moves like this?
I think that Singh's trying to save his skin. I think that's what this is all about. You look at one of the more unpopular things that the Liberals have done that you can push back against, I would say it's the carbon tax. So it's a good opportunity to sort of stick your foot in the door, basically have an opinion on a wedge issue. But here's the problem. The whole NDP platform is basically built on equality of outcome, which means you think about equality of outcome, it kind of means dragging everybody down to the lowest common denominator. It's the only way it works. So it's socialism, right? You've already got a socialist party being the Liberals, self-proclaimed socialists. So the NDP has to be even further left. So unfortunately, I fully expect them to propose something that makes us pay even more for the government to do absolutely nothing, right? Like, we know the carbon tax was a complete flop and done nothing for Canadians, done nothing for the climate. It's just been a cash grab. But their programs, and he said this specifically, well, the Conservatives just want to make cuts. They want to get rid of the carbon tax. Yeah, no shit. So he's got to go the complete opposite direction. And the only way to do that is be more socially driven. So take more money. My expectation is this. He said also, he made a comment about the people not paying for their heating oil in Atlantic Canada. So I expect everybody in his mind to continue paying their carbon tax, and these bigger companies that have these economic levers to pull to pay even more. The difference, I think, for him is he'll actually disperse the money to maybe lower income families or not the families, social programs. That's how he'll do it instead. The nice thing is the NDP are completely irrelevant at this point. So whatever Singh proposes won't gain any real traction.
So what I find really interesting here is the language games going on. So the Globe and Mail, in one of the articles that they wrote upon this, they ended up going and putting a tag down at the bottom of it as an editor's note saying, a previous version of this article used the phrase carbon tax, which contradicts the Globe and Mail style book. It has been updated to use the phrase carbon pricing. And you see the same language being used even in the summary of the one article that I just gave there. It says the Singh was asked about his stance on consumer carbon pricing. So they're trying to obfuscate the fact that this is a tax, that is a penalty of sorts.
Rebranding.
Exactly. And so it's so funny to see that, again, when you go to this idea of media manipulation works, it's not that they outright lie. It's that they color everything in a way to direct you to the opinion they want you to have on it. So, for instance, they won't tell you that this thing happened between conservative and liberal, and these are just what they said. It's far right conservative commentator, blah blah blah. Yeah. Already they're saying evil person, villain. Don't agree with what this person says. So they're conditioning you before you hear what
they're hurting you like sheep.
Exactly. Same thing in this scenario is, we can't have a conversation about the carbon tax. It's what are you talking about? It's consumer carbon pricing. And it actually, what's his name? George Carlin had a great bit on this.
Love George. Yeah. He's a national treasure.
And he had, actually, let's play that here for a second.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat. Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet you if we'd have still been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have gotten the attention they needed at the time. I'll bet you that.
He's great.
But this goes to that point about language and how they manipulate, and you see this, and it's in full display. They even put it at the bottom of their articles, being like, hey, we have our, they call it a style guide, this language that is designed to make sure that when you read it, you either can't picture it very well or you picture it how we want you to see it.
It's interesting, actually, because it's you think about the weapons of attack, and like I always say that the media is the government's most potent weapon they have. That's what I believe. I think that gives them the most power and control. So it's no surprise that there's a set of tools that all these basically nationalized media channels have to use to make sure that they're saying the right things, doing the right things, and relaying the right messaging, because that's exactly what it comes down to. It's not conservative, it's far right, kid kidnapping, whatever it is, throw in anything you can to make them terrible, conservatives. You're like, oh yeah, they're the most evil people in the world. Tell me what you want to tell me about them now, because I know these are the good guys. It's just wild. But I mean, you come to expect it. Like when I read anything, I pretty much throw out all the hyperbole right away. Like I'm like, okay, let me sort of cut through exactly what's happening here. It's like, oh, it's 500 words, probably narrow it down to about 250, in my mind, and just cut out any of the opinion stuff. But the thing is that took me a while. Like, I do this new stuff every day. So now it doesn't affect me. I don't really have those types of opinions. I can kind of cut through the nonsense. But my point I'm making here is like, you kind of have to be seasoned in the world of maybe journalism or maybe just consuming information at scale. Like you really have to do it all the time. You have to be conscious of it to actually be able to get around these things.
Oh yeah.
So for the average person that is, taking in the news for 5-10 minutes a day, you don't really have a chance. Unfortunately, these are too potent a weapon. Like I said, it's too potent a weapon. Like I said.
Well, we even see as well, Global News posted a poll the other day by Ipsos saying, and they titled the headline, "A small majority of Canadians want opposition parties to work together with the Liberals rather than trigger an early election," a new poll suggests. So from that headline, you get the idea of, okay, these parties should work together and make sure that the Conservatives don't get into power. That's what the people of Canada want. But then we even covered as well that same day a poll came out which showed that yes, so they say a small majority, right? It was 40. There was another poll of 47% of Canadians wanted an election. If 47% of people in a country want an election, that's a pretty staggering thing. Like even consider back in 2021 when they did call an early election, nobody wanted it. Nobody was even asking for it.
It was political gain on Trudeau's part only. He thought he could get a majority.
Yeah. And, in that, which is funny now that he sits here in that time when nobody was asking for an election.
Yeah.
He sits there and says, well, this is
he
what was needed.
Pulls the trigger on the most expensive election in Canadian history when Canada's been suffering economically because he thought it'd be good for his own personal gain, $600 million plus. And now that half the country wants one, crickets.
Exactly. Well, now not even just crickets. He'll go on the offense saying Canadians don't want an election right now. I've been traveling around Canada all summer, and Canadians don't. They haven't been telling me this. It's So, but either way, that's just the whole manipulation. Is they can say again, it's all about the framing, and it's not about whether the thing they're saying is true or false. It's how they frame it in a way to make you feel a certain way.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our last story. We've got Trump says he will not participate in a second debate with Harris. Former President Donald Trump announced he will not participate in a third presidential debate, despite Vice President Kamala Harris's team advocating for one. Trump dismissed the idea, likening Harris's request to a losing fighter seeking a rematch, stating he already covered key issues like immigration and the economy in earlier debates. Harris, at a rally in North Carolina, emphasized the need for another debate to clarify the stakes of the election. Her campaign suggested holding the debate in October. Fox News proposed hosting a 90-minute debate, but Trump's decision appears final. So, thoughts on this?
Okay, so if you actually watched it objectively, she ate his lunch. She did. She beat him. He was rattled. It was pretty noticeable. You know, they had a good plan in place, and I think they executed well. Now, there's a couple things they had to their advantage. So one thing that I saw pop up is maybe she had earrings in that were an audio device. So she may have had a team working with her on them. I don't know if that's true or not. I just saw it pop up. Maybe not. Maybe true. Maybe not.
I don't think it was.
I just
looked
saw.
into it.
I feel like those things pop up. You're gonna okay. Maybe not. So I'm being clear. I don't know. But the other thing I saw pop up was that apparently the ABC News person that was one of the people that was sort of adjudicating the debate was one of her sorority sisters. Now, okay, a little bit of favor on your side. I get it.
That's legit.
And I get that. You know, it could have been Fox News, could have been buddies with Trump. Like, it could happen. So, okay, there's one thing. Another thing that I heard was that she got all the answers ahead of time. Basically, she got all the questions ahead of time, almost verbatim. So maybe a little different, but basically the same. And they agreed to only fact check Trump. Now, that was one thing that I did see that was a bit egregious, but it is what it is. But here's the thing. If you actually listened to Harris, she said a lot of things that weren't necessarily untrue, but you've had 3.5 years to implement the policy you're talking about to fix the problems. You haven't done any of these things. So I still think that the Republican Party needs to be in place here to sort of correct course. That's how I feel about that. But in terms of the actual debate, Trump got outmatched. And if he does it again in October, it's too close to the election. So I'm of the opinion right now that he's doing a little bit of damage control. That's my take on it. But he's got 2 months and the news cycle moves quickly. But he's got other tools to use. He can go say, here's my policy strategy here. He can go do rallies where he does quite well with. He does good at those things. Those work to his advantage. Just like debating Biden worked to his advantage, but debating Harris, in my opinion, doesn't. So I think it's best that he stays off the debate stage, continues to push his ideas towards policy, because at the end of the day, I do think that they're the party that are going to help America correct course. I do think that's important. Getting back in there. Here was my sort of internal feeling. I felt his age when he was in there. She was way sharper. Now, I don't think that Trump is in the position Biden was in. I don't think so. But I think as you get older, there's something that happens in your brain. So when you're younger, you have more creativity. And then you go through this bridge process where you have creativity and wisdom, and you connect those two dots, and then you get into more of a combining wisdom phase. This is just, it's a biological process. It's exactly how it happens. I butchered it a little bit, but that's the idea. So when you get into just sort of the wisdom phase, I think that you can contribute valuably to society, but that's kind of where you operate. So you are inherently not going to debate as well because you don't operate as well on your feet. You can't think as quickly on your feet. Now, that's not what a president does. Basically, they got a team of people that help them make decisions, for sure. But being on a debate stage and being quick on your feet against a team that's kind of working against you, that's not really what being a president is about. And given his age and even where his, like physiologically where his brain is at, that's not going to be working to his advantage. So I did really notice the difference in kind of their, just where they're currently at, what their capacity allowed on a debate stage. So in that specific environment, she is going to test better. So I think it's better he stays off the stage.
So yeah, the one thing I just want to clear up about the earrings, I don't think that was the case. I know it was a lot of farce. It was a lot of speculation. And don't get me wrong, there was spyware that you can purchase a lot of this stuff for like $200-$300 online. Anybody can go grab these things.
Let me do say this one thing though. People are looking for reasons that Trump didn't do as well as he should. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see that from the right. So they're going to be throwing these things out all the time.
I don't think you have to look any further than the clear biasedness of the debate.
Right.
Like you were pointing out, they were only fact checking Trump throughout the entire thing and also fact checking him on some things that are wrong. So like for instance, the famous one that has been
The
going
Haitian
viral
duck eaters?
since is the no cat eaters.
Oh, okay. Damn.
They're eating the cats and dogs.
I
He
heard.
said.
I mean, I saw something on social media, but I was like, I can't verify this.
I looked into it. There's some sketchy shit going on there. So yeah, it looks like so in Springfield, Ohio, the population, there's now 20,000 Haitian asylum seekers. They boosted it from 5,000 to 20,000
Right.
recently. So they added 15,000 more people. The overall population of Springfield, Ohio is only 60,000 people. So
Oh,
now,
God.
now you have a third of it. You've just dumped in asylum seekers from Haiti, which people need to realize with Haiti, it is more or less the most economically poor country on the planet.
You basically have monarchs and you have like, it's not this, but you basically have your kings and your peasants. That like economically, that's a good way to look at it.
It's more gang leaders. And,
Yes. But I mean, like in terms of the dichotomy, it's like some people, I do know people that are from that country that are basically the king's version of it. But you look at anything on TV and most people are just in squalor.
So to put it into perspective, some of them have I was watching a 5-minute video on it. It's pretty crazy about how a very common thing in the kids' diets in these regions that are poverty stricken in Haiti, which is most of the country, they eat like mud cookies. So they literally take dirt, they mix it with water to a certain thing that they like, all of a sudden it becomes edible. So they're literally eating dirt. This is how poor this country is. And so it's bad, and don't get me wrong, you for sure, like you can sit there and go like, that's terrible. Hope like we should do something about that. But the idea that you can just take all of those people in large quantities and dump them into an area and that certain things won't go along with that. Like you're telling me that somebody who grew up for 20, 30 years eating mud cookies isn't going to look at a cat and be like, huh? Like, not bad. There's more people from Springfield as well saying that this is a problem.
It seems to be some truth to the story. I think that there was not enough to corroborate it, and it was easy enough for the left to deny it. I think that was and they realized that if he did say that, which he did, which Trump did, they would highlight it to try to make him look like a fool. I think that was, whether truth or not, you and I both know that doesn't matter. I think that was the opportunity they seized. That's all. Yeah.
So I think it's probably both parties are wrong on it, in the sense where the left is being like, this doesn't happen. This is just completely made up. And then you've got the Trump people that are probably like, this is happening every single day at all times, and it's just out of control and is mayhem. Yeah. When in reality, it's probably like there's 5 to 10 instances of it. But that's still something to be noted.
That's insane still. Like if my dog was one of them, then there'd be a war till I died.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool.
Actually, I saw a funny meme, and it was a guy like as if he was pitching to a Hollywood executives, and he was like, okay, John Wick has a cat in Ohio.
Internet. It's great.
But yeah, so like I don't want to make it seem like this thing is just crazy widespread, but we really do need to be aware that you can't dump tens of thousands of people from these poverty-stricken areas into certain neighborhoods and just expect that everything
they're going to assimilate overnight.
Yeah.
And operate and use the grocery store and then not do things like this. This is the way of life. It's like less civilized people act less civilized.
Yeah.
Very basic.
And actually, one thing that I found very interesting about Haiti as well, as I went and looked into it, was the their religion. Voodoo is extremely common in Haiti.
Yes.
And so that was another complaint by some of the people in these areas, were being like, they're doing these really fucking weird rituals like in our parks.
I can confirm that for sure. Even like the family that I know from there, I haven't talked to them in a while, but they were big into importing, exporting there. So they did quite well for themselves. And I knew their family, and the son was close to my age. He always had like voodoo necklaces on and this whole thing. He was a rational person for the most part. But like, that was like their thing.
It's a major part of it.
Carry little things inside this thing on his little chest that had like this weird thing. I'm like, it's like, it was, when I think back on it, it's kind of strange. But yeah, it was very legit, even from like sort of the higher end of society.
So one of the things too is like, even you look at New Orleans, it's very common for them to practice voodoo down there, but it's kind of looked at as like this thing that kind of happens in this like little corner, and it's like it's a tourist attraction and it's not out of control.
You westernized it.
That's very
You
different.
know what I mean? That's probably the best way to look at it. Oh, you westernized it, so it's safe and like it's kind of a sideshow. Yeah, okay, cool, fun.
Yeah,
like it's taming. It's like the same way we tame cuisine. Like you won't eat spicy food from certain. We got to westernize that, or it's going to burn their tongue off. I like spicy food, but for the most part, you tame it. Yes.
Yeah, but so. Yeah, that's so the whole Haitians eating pets thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how crazy it is there, but there does seem to be some truth to it. Even I saw a girl on having a fucking breakdown on it went super viral on Twitter about it, where this girl from Springfield, she's like, I'm pissed. Like my town, what's happening in my town has turned into a meme and a joke. She's like, I don't feel safe walking around at night anymore. Like, I don't feel safe here. Like, and everybody's just laughing about this whole Haitians eating cats thing. She's like, no, but like my town has gotten more dangerous. And she's like bawling, crying.
Well, yeah, but now property value, businesses, everything goes down the tube very quickly.
Exactly. So again, whether it seems like the whole conversation has got sucked into this pet eating thing, but it does. I just hate that it's like, you can't have a rational conversation about these things from the whole perspective of it's like, oh, we just got to pretend like nothing bad of this ever happens.
Welcome to politics in 2024. Like I said, man, it's unfortunate. But I mean, sort of back to the conversation here is it's better that he stays off the debate stage with Kamala Harris, whether she has an advantage from the network or whether she's just a little more well equipped because of where she's currently at in her life to debate. You know what I mean? It is a little bit like. It is what it is. I would like to see him win. And I think he's got a lot of time between now and the election to, again, highlight the missteps of the Democrats and how he's going to fix things and what his policy strategy is. And he's really got to focus on that. And I think he can pull this out. But that's where he's got to stay, you know?
Personally, I would like to see a well-moderated debate between the two of them.
I think you've seen what you need to see. He cannot keep up. I think you've seen it.
I don't think that was because of I don't think that was because of just natural circumstances. Like if we're playing basketball and the whole floor is tilted in one direction, it's going to be a lot easier on your end. Like, of course you can sit there in that scenario.
Do you think the moderation was that far off base? I mean, I watched it. He had his opportunities to say what he wanted to say. She rattled him. She got under his skin. He struggled a little bit to stay focused. You know, like I'm okay with his closing arguments because of how the rest of the debate went, but they weren't great. You know, his closing argument, you know, it was basically like, hey, the Democrats had their opportunity, they screwed everything up, don't vote for them, which the right leaning media has now taken and run with because it's the right message. But he needed to say that because he got beat the whole debate. That was the only way to be like, yeah, she beat me today. But look, everything they've done over the last 4 years has been absolute garbage and this country's on fire. You can't vote for these people. That was the strategy. But if he had won that debate, those closing remarks could have been inspiring, ambitious, policy, make the world better. But he couldn't go that route because he got trumped. It is what it is. He got beat. So it's kind of how it panned out. So in my opinion, even if you level the playing field, I still think if all the things are equal, even if it's on Fox News and let's say it's an even court, you know, maybe even a little tilted towards his favor, based on what I saw, even if he performs at the top level, I still think he comes out 60-40, loses on that debate stage, 55-45 as a percentage. I don't think it works out for him. Let's put it this way. There's no way I can see him coming out like on top significantly to make enough of a difference to take the risk because it's risk reward, right? That's how you got to look at these things. I think that there's a better chance he gets beat down again a little bit. So if I were him, I would not do it. And I think that's exactly why he's not doing it, right? Because if he'd done well and goes, no, this is an opportunity for me to put my foot down and show them what's what, I'll do it. But he's like, nah, I'm out. He knows.
Well, I think if there is the scenario where they gave the questions to Kamala beforehand, and then they also had the moderators very, very heavy-handed in her direction. Again, fact-checking him over 30 times and her once. Like that's not fair.
I hear you.
And that can contribute to say what rattles him in that scenario. My whole thing is that it's look, I don't really care that much. I don't care that all that much about Trump or anything on that front, but I think it looks worse for him because he's been sitting here for the last month or two saying that, Kamala is trying to run away from debates. She's not being interviewed. She's not doing any of this. And that's true. Every scenario that you see Kamala in, it is a scenario she's prepped for, whether it's a 1-minute promo clip that she's posting on social media, whether it's her 40-minute interview that was cut down to 18 minutes, whether it's this debate where it seems like she probably had some prep done beforehand and helped throughout it. If there is a way, I agree with you that if there's any chance of the debate being corrupt, that he shouldn't do it. But if he can find a debate stage where it's level-handed, I think he should. Because
not a chance. I think, look, I hear what you're saying. You have the right intention, but even the Republican Party saying, no, we're tapping out. They're not going to win this. It's not the stage that they can win on. Look, I argue with my dad constantly about politics and the world and this and that, and he always used to be able to beat me. Over the last 5 years, it's not even close. My dad's in his 70s now. I love my dad, but he cannot keep up with me anymore. There's no chance. The amount of new information and knowledge and creativity, my ability to sort of mold everything together, we're not even close anymore. It's not, so I actually, the other day I left the house. I was at my parents' house. I said to Meg, I think I'm going to stop having political debates at my parents' house because I can see that it's rattling him and upsetting him because it's not a fair playing field anymore. It's just what it is. And my whole life has been intellectual and intelligent. We're playing a different game at this point. And he did get beat. And the thing is, there are better ways for him to look. It's a marketing game. And I got to give Trump credit. He's done a really, really good job of branding and marketing himself. That's why he does so well. But he found that when he got on the stage with her, and you also have to think about the dichotomy between how well he did against Biden and then how she kind of took him down. It's not a good look. And you have 2 months to shake that off. You go again in a month from now, and you're a month out from the election, and she does the same thing again, or she handles you on that stage, or even if it's 50-50, the media is already on her side. So you're going to lose, and now it's an uphill battle with a month left. Take that variable off the table, use the things that you can control, which is exactly what they're doing, and that's how I think you win this election. I think it's a big mistake to get on that stage, and they've already said the same. It's not going to happen.
Oh, I didn't say it was going to happen.
No, I don't mean like, sorry. And so it shouldn't happen. Like I totally agree with their strategy. I would not put him on that stage either.
I wonder too how much of his poor performances, because, talking about, say you were talking about the age and not being as quick on his feet, which is probably a thing.
No, it is a thing. Physiologically, it's a thing.
Give me a second.
Sure.
But then also too, what is very apparent is that he's trying to come off as more rational. Even if you go look at his interviews where people are being really easy on him and kind of just letting him flow,
right,
you can tell he's trying to put himself forward as a more measured and rational person compared to 4, 5, 6 years ago, where in those debates, he's sitting there and he's WWEing it, right?
Yeah. 2016 Trump was off the wall. It's great.
Exactly. So I wonder how much of him also pulling away, like, the age, I would say, is a factor. Like, nice. I would agree that his age is a factor, but I also wonder how much his change of it's like a boxer. If you're a boxer and your
orthodox,
advantage,
you're orthodox, then you go
advantage,
southpaw, yeah.
Or if your advantage is strength, and then all of a sudden you start trying to box like you're this guy that stays on the outside and just jabs his way through and point fights. Like, if you switch up your style, then you're going to have a more higher likelihood of losing the fight.
Yeah, but actually, I'll take your analogy and I'll run with it. You talk about momentum in a fight, right? So remember when Leon Edwards fought Kamaru Usman?
Mm-hmm.
Usman was crushing him the whole fight. And Edwards caught him with that left kick to the head just before the fight ended. Put him out. Leon's the king, right? Edwards was a good fighter, but not really top tier. I was surprised he even got the fight against Usman. Next time he got in the cage, he crushed him. So now Edwards, he had a few fights where he was just on top of the world. His confidence was there. He was the guy. He got that win. That's how Kamala feels right now. She's Edwards. Right now, she's like, I got the momentum. I'm the queen. I'm going to crush him. So the momentum is also in her favor, which is something I would, if I were the Republican Party, I would also pay attention to that.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add before we head over to Substack?
That is everything.
All right, don't forget to subscribe to our Substack where you can find exclusive podcasts, original articles, and a direct line to Jonathan and myself, all for just $5 a month. Today, we're going to be chatting on Substack, going into a little bit more about how we got into doing what we do and where we hope to go with it, what our goals with it are. So you can find the link in our description below to head over there. And for those of you who don't, we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.